Ladies and gentlemen, step on the following agenda is welcoming remarks from the Honorable, the Vice Rector for Planning, Cooperation, Business and Information of 11 Maret University. We would like to invite Professor Dr. Sajidan.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Mutia Asmi. Honorable Mr. Nadiem Anwar Makarim, BA MBA as the Minister of Education, Culture, Research and Technology of Indonesia. Honorable Professor Engineer Nizam MSc PhD, IPM, ASEAN Eng, as the Director General of Higher Education, Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology of Indonesia. Respectable distinguished speakers and guests, dear conference participants, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. On behalf of the Chief Executive Board of Universitas 11 Maret Indonesia, it is my great pleasure and privilege to welcome you all to the 6th International Conference on Teacher Training and Education, IGTTE, in which this year we conduct the conference virtually through these Zoom cloud meetings. This conference will be conducted in 2 days with the themes teacher education and professional development in the COVID-19 trend. Thank you very much for joining this international conference. Then I would like to also express my sincere appreciation to the Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Universitas 11 Maret, for hosting and organizing this international conference. Before giving the time to the keynote and invited speakers, I will take this opportunity to make some general remarks and thoughts briefly on the overview of IGTTE Conference 2021. Prior conference has been successfully conducted and given positive impact on the improvement of teacher publication in the proceedings and the establishment of research collaboration networks among the conference participants. We take this success as the fundamental background to conduct the 6th International Conference on Teacher Training and Education, IGTTE 2021, with the theme Teacher Education and Professional Development in the COVID-19 trend. We realized that the COVID-19 pandemic today has impacted all sectors of a country, including the education sectors. It even almost paralyzed the move of education in some developing countries, including in our countries, Indonesia. In attempt to stabilize teacher continuous professional development and the move of educational development, this international conference aims to provide a forum for researchers, academics, teachers, schools, principal, government agencies, and consultants to share their views and talk about teacher education trends for the perspective of professional development and teacher practice in the age of COVID-19. My deep gratitude also goes to all plenary speakers who are coming from 7 countries for their availability and willingness to share their knowledge, experience, and expertise. I am fully confident that their participation will strengthen the conference standing. My thanks also to the parallel presenters who will share their knowledge and experience in this forum. I would like to also express my genuine appreciation to all participants who are joining this international event. This international conference is also in line with the vision and mission of Universitas 11 Maret. Universitas 11 Maret has committed to contribute to the sustainable development, not only at the national level, but also in the regional and international environment, as we are fully aware that in today's globalized world, contribution of universities should be promoted to a wider spectrum. Finally, I wish you a very fruitful discussion, and again, thank you very much for participating in this conference. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Professor Dr. Sajidan, for the wonderful remarks. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite you to listen to the welcoming remarks from the Honorable Minister of Education, Culture, Research, and Technology, Republic of Indonesia, Nadiem Anwar Makarim.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan, Rahayu. Yang saya hormati Dekan Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan Universitas 11 Maret, Bapak Mardiana, Sivitas Akademika Universitas 11 Maret, Ibu Bapak peserta konferensi, serta para hadirin yang berbahagia. Di masa pandemi ini kita melihat sendiri bagaimana digitalisasi semakin tidak bisa dihindari. Teknologi digital memungkinkan kita terus bekerja dan anak-anak tetap belajar. Kemudian muncul satu pertanyaan, mungkinkah guru akan digantikan oleh teknologi? Dan dengan sangat yakin saya menjawab, tidak. Peran guru tidak akan pernah bisa digantikan oleh teknologi secanggih apapun atau koneksi internet secepat apapun. Karena guru memiliki rasa sayang kepada murid dan kecintaan untuk mendidik, hal-hal yang tidak dimiliki oleh teknologi. Dan itulah esensi daripada pembelajaran, koneksi batin antara peserta didik dan yang mendidik. Ibu dan Bapak guru yang saya hormati, di masa mendatang anak-anak kita akan menghadapi tantangan-tantangan yang lebih rumit dari saat ini. Sebab itu mereka membutuhkan guru-guru yang memerdekakan mereka untuk belajar sesuai tingkat kemampuannya dan cara yang mereka sukai. Di tengah persiapan melompat menuju perubahan, kami berupaya terus memastikan tidak ada guru yang tertinggal. Pandemi makin menyadarkan kami akan pentingnya pemanfaatan teknologi dan program-program peningkatan kompetensi dan profesionalisme guru. Kami ingin guru-guru Indonesia tidak lagi harus mengikuti seminar atau pelatihan yang jauh dari rumah atau sekolah. Kami ingin materi-materi yang bermanfaat dapat diakses dari mana saja dan kapan saja dengan mudah melalui platform digital. Saat ini kami tengah mengembangkan sejumlah platform yang akan melengkapi platform guru belajar, guru berbagi yang sudah dimanfaatkan oleh lebih dari 7 juta pendidik di seluruh Indonesia. Selain itu, kami melanjutkan program pelatihan guru yang akan mencetak 405.000 guru penggerak. Saya berharap Ibu dan Bapak yang hadir pada kesempatan kali ini tidak dapat mengambil manfaat dari semua inisiatif kami dan menyebarkan praktik baik kepada guru-guru lain di seluruh penjuru Indonesia. Ibu dan Bapak peserta konferensi yang saya hormati, guru yang mau terus belajar adalah harapan masa depan Indonesia. Mari bersama menjadikan pembelajar sepanjang hayat yang terus bergerak serentak, mewujudkan merdeka belajar. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Shanti 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 Om. Namo Buddhaya.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite you to join the photo session. So please kindly open the camera because the committee will take the photo starting from the first page.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Mutia. So I will start from right now. So please, everyone in the first page, open your camera so we will take a picture together. So in the first slide, please open your camera. And I will start to take the picture. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, we're going to the second slide in here. Okay, we're going to the second slide. Okay, smile. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're going to the third slide. Okay, smile. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're going to the next slide. 1, 2, 3, smile. Thank you, Mbak Mutia.
Thank you, Mas Surya, for taking the photo for us. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we now proceed our meeting to the next agenda, which is the core agenda, that is to hit the session delivered by our keynote speakers, Dr. Praptono, Master of Education. Dr. Praptono, Master of Education, was born in Kediri and currently lives in Depok, Jawa Barat. He is currently occupied as a Director of Education and Training of Teachers and Education Staff. For Dr. Praptono, Master of Education, time is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Mbak Mutia Hasmi. This may sound here from you.
Yes, it's clear.
It's clear.
Yes.
And can you see my presentation?
Yes, it's clear also.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Thank you, Pak
Mbak
Thank
Mutia
you.
Hasmi. The Honorable Pak Wakil Rektor, Pak Profesor Dr. Sajidan, and also Ibu Din, Ibu Dr. Mardiana, the Honorable of all speakers and also all participants in this conference. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Pak Praptono, your presentation today.
So, I would like to present my presentation. And first of all, Pak Iwan apologize for you all because he has a meeting with the Parliament, and I will represent him to give some presentation. And my title is Transforming Education, Indonesian Education System, Developing Teachers and Instructional Leaders. So if you have hear from our program, we call the program Guru Penggerak. Ladies and gentlemen, we have three agenda here. The first one, more schooling but less learning. I would like to present the Indonesian background in developing the education system by this time, and then I would like to present why the leadership that focus on learning is important in our education system to improve the quality of the student result in teaching and learning. And then finally, the Directorate General of GTK proposed, and now this program have implemented in our program. We call program Guru Penggerak, developing instructional leaders. Now we move to the first agenda, more schooling but less learning. As the background, and if we look from the enrollment in Indonesia has improved over time, we can look from the gross enrollment rate, that's the participation rate in primary education. We achieve more than 100%, and in junior secondary school, if we look from year to year, have improved increasingly, and now in 2018, we achieved more than 90%, and also in senior secondary school, we achieved more than 80%. That's the gross enrollment rate. But if we look from the quality of the achievement of the education of the students, And we would like to take from the score PISA score and ranking, and in 3 areas, in reading, mathematics, and also in science, we still very, very low if we compare with other countries. 70% of students are below minimum competencies level, and if we take from the average, we still 122 below the average. And in mathematics, 71% of students are below minimum competency level, and in science, 60% of students. This is mean that consistently ranked as one of the lowest performing countries in PISA. And also, if we look from the 15 years, that's the score of PISA in our countries also very stagnant. And in other aspect, if we look from the bullying, that's 41% of Indonesian students reported being bullied a few times a month. And also only 29% of Indonesian students disagree that intelligence is something that cannot change very much. This is talking about the mindset. This is our condition here, that we say that students come to the school, but like World Bank said, that in schooling but without learning. So that is the challenges of our system to take over, to increase the student quality in education. And now we try to look at the leadership that focus on learning is very important in order to improve the education quality here. And as we can take from the report summarized finding from the International Review of School Leadership undertaken by McKinsey and company in collaboration with the National College for Leadership of School and Children Services during 2010. There was included a literature review, almost 70 interviews with experts, policymakers, and leaders of school system, and survey of 1,850 leaders in Canada, England, United States, New Zealand, Netherlands, Singapore, and Australia. There are 5 key points that is as a reason or a basic information that if we want to make a changing in our education system to improve the student achievement, one, you cannot improve school without leaders. It means that the role of principal, supervisor, and also the educational government in central or also in district is very important to improve the school quality. Number 2, selection of school leader is one of the most important decisions for an education system. Does this mean that we have to put the important attention in the selection of the principal and also supervisor? High performance principal focus more on instructional leadership and the development of teacher. It means that the principal not only as administrator or manager as only, but they have to take a role as the instructional leadership. So if the teacher have a problem with teaching and learning process, the principal can give solution, discuss with their teacher. And number 4, leadership focus on teaching, learning, and people is critical to the current and future success of school. And you know that our minister is very concerned with improving the teacher achievement in literacy, numeracy, and also in the empowering the student character. So because we have a big challenging to to change the mindset of the student, the mindset of the teacher. So in our teaching, in our training, we focus on the how can we improve the teaching and learning process of the student, of the teacher. So the Indonesian teacher can serve the student based on the capacity, the talent of their student. And finally, leaders learn best in contact and from diverse range of sources, including peers, superiors, online resource, and formal training. And to implement this kind of key points, and besides we implement the program Guru Penggerak. If you look in our program, we also launch the portal Guru Belajar and also portal Guru Berbagi. Through this portal, the teacher can sharing experience, sharing RPP, and also the video, and the other teachers can download this material. Now this is the last my agenda. This talking about the Guru Penggerak, developing instructional leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, there are three phases program of Guru Penggerak. The first one, self-change. So this program has started in last year in 2020, and this month 2,800 Guru Penggerak has finished the program, and we also in implementing the program Guru Penggerak step 2, step 3, and now we are in process to select the program Guru Penggerak Angkatan 4. So total this year we have more than 15,000 Guru Penggerak that they will finish their training the next year. The process we start from the how can we change the paradigm of the individual teacher on student and the learning environment. So we will explore of the participants of the philosophies of learning and contextualize them into their local practices. So we realize that the technology is very important, but the local condition, and we know that Indonesia is very diverse from Papua to Jakarta. So we want that all teachers can design, can implement the teaching and learning process by individually by using the local condition. And in the phase 2, after the paradigm of the teacher have changed better, now we move to the second phase that the program focus primarily on classroom change. So after the individual of teacher, their mindset is changing. Now we try to the condition of in the class. Through this program, the participants learn about how to put independent learning concept and student well-being into practice in their classroom. And the phase 3, that is the program to improve the communities of the school. So the program put the participants on the seat of instructional leaders when they start learning about school management that empowers its ecosystem and asset to improve the quality of learning. So I can say that the program Guru Penggerak is not only the training to improve the capacity of the teachers in teaching and learning process, but this program also to prepare the teacher become the leader in the school. As I said before, that this program focus on the school leadership. So now we provide the new regulation still in processing, that after the teacher finish the program in Guru Penggerak, they will be candidate of principal or also supervisor and also the instructor of the training in district level, provincial level, on also in national level. Now, in the implementing of the training of program Guru Penggerak, we focus on the reflection, collaboration, and community building. Online learning. This is we try to accommodate the situation because of the COVID. So in the first program, we designed that the training will do on face-to-face, but because of the COVID, now the total of the program in preparation of the instructor to the all participant we do online learning. So teachers don't need to leave their school, and because the program is conducted more than 9 months, so beside the teacher follow the training, they also teach their student, and also they can practice to the content of the training to their teaching in the class. So teacher participants and facilitators engage in a series of discussion and reflection to construct knowledge and plan the implementation. And also in monthly workshop, the participants follow discuss with other participants, with facilitated by the master coach, with who are we recruit especially to help the participant in doing the training. Coaches and participants do a deeper exploration and simulation on how to put the knowledge into practice. Principal, superintendents, and local education department officials are involved. So during 9 months training, the participant will do workshop 9 times. And we also provide the model of the training with a school visit. It means that coaches come to the participant school to observe and reflect the change of the practice that are happening throughout the program. Ladies and gentlemen, the ultimate measure of success of the program Guru Penggerak. So as I mentioned before, that Guru Penggerak will be instructional leaders across our system, so they can become a school principal, school supervisor, teacher training instructor, and facilitator. And the catalytic impact of Guru Penggerak is mean that we want to the participant of Guru Penggerak can disseminate their experience. They can support to other teachers to always improve their competencies, the capacity, so that the quality of teaching and learning process in class will improve. Then will impact to the student achievement. Demonstrated expertise in student-centered education, coach and mentor for other teachers, develop community of practice for teachers at school, and also transform the education system. Key levels of success in the selection, training, and support of the Guru Penggerak. We do the selection is very strictly, and based on our experience in program Guru Penggerak Angkatan 1, that from the 20,000 candidates, the candidates of program Guru Penggerak, we only take to 2,800 as the information that program Guru Penggerak Angkatan 1 we implement in 56 districts, Angkatan 2 also in 50 districts. This is the district difference between Angkatan 1 and Angkatan 2. Also in Angkatan 3 we select the teacher from the 56 districts. So from Angkatan 1 to Angkatan 2, we implement the program Guru Penggerak in 168 districts. Now, and based on our schedule that in 2022, the program Guru Penggerak will implement in all districts in our country. Collaborative and interactive learning process. This is emphasized on student crowd data reflection, and also the key performance of our program. We do the program Guru Penggerak by system on the job learning. So the participant get the material from the instructor and they practice to the class. We also provide the facilitators and coaches. So the for continuous learning throughout 9 months program, and this is the key person that guarantee that the program will implement good. This because of the master coach, or we call in our program by the name pengajar praktek. This kind of the person we select from the senior teacher, we select from the principal, and also from the supervisor, and they will accompany the participant. One master coach will have 4 to 5 participants, Guru Penggerak. And finally, collaborative curriculum development involving practitioners and experts. We have developed 10 modules of the program Guru Penggerak. Package 1 content of the vision of the Guru Penggerak. Package 2 consists of the developing teaching and learning process in the class, and package 3 consists of the instructional leadership. And this is the insight from Guru Penggerak. This is from Guru Penggerak Angkatan 1, and very excited and very interesting that the good experience that can take by the participant. Like not all students have gadgets for online learning. In PGP program Guru Penggerak, we learn how to develop interesting modules. We then printed and delivered the module to the house of student with no gadgets. The one of good characteristic of the participant, if they have a problem, they will try to find the solution of the problem. They can observe to internet. They discuss with other people. They discuss. We try to ask to the instructor or also to the resource person. So they are not stay lonely, but they will try to discuss with the partners. Number 2, I started to use online group work. Initially, I thought that it would be difficult and confusing for the student. To my surprise, students were more active in discussion and generated new ideas. So in the class, teaching and learning process more active than before. in program Guru Penggerak, I'm not only learn about technology, but how to use it well. For instance, after I learn about differentiated instruction, I give 3 point options of assignment. In the past, if I ask students to create videos, not many submitted the assignment. After I gave student options such as videos, sound, and visual, this is a good 95% of students submitted the assignment. So this program can encourage the student to more active, more compulsory to the task to finish the homework or the project from their teacher. Ladies and gentlemen, that's my presentation, and thank you very much for your attention. This is the final slide of me. So we based on my national document in 2024, we try to provide more than 400,000 Guru Penggerak. So if we have at least 20% of the number of teachers in Indonesia is Guru Penggerak, so the improving of the education quality will exponential. This is our vision, our mission, and our purpose to implement the program. Now we are in implementing of Angkatan 4. So from Angkatan to Angkatan, the total number of Guru Penggerak also will bigger number. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and I apologize if in our speak there is some speak not good, and selamat untuk mengikuti konferensi. Terima kasih. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Praptono, for the presentation. It was really insightful for us. Okay, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we now proceed our meeting to the next agenda, the plenary session. That is to hear the session delivered by Associate Professor Lin Tan from Western Sydney University, Australia, and Professor Yoo Jong-so from Ewha Women University, South Korea. And the session will be moderated by Dr. Indah Setyaningsih. Dr. Endang Setyaningsih was graduated from doctoral program majoring English education in Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia. She is currently occupied as lecturer of English education in 11 Maret University, Indonesia. To Dr. Endang Setyaningsih, the mic is yours. Good morning, Dr. Endang.
Hi. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mutia. Welcome, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay, thank you. All right. First of all, I would like to say good morning, or perhaps good afternoon and good evening to all of you. It's such a privilege for us to have so many of you join us today here in the virtual conference. Bapak and Ibu, the International Conference of Teacher Training and Education 2021. This year, our theme is Teacher Education and Professional Development in the COVID-19 turn. And my name is Endang Setyaningsih, Otia for short, and I'll be your moderator for this session. Bapak and Ibu, ladies and gentlemen, in many educational systems, teachers about controlled subjects and controlling agents. Teachers are trained and recruited to implement the curriculum and wider educational policies of which they have no direct ownership. But at the same time, teachers are encouraged to develop autonomy and agency in doing their day-to-day work and in their professional development, particularly today during the current pandemic, which requires teachers to be more and more adaptive to changes. Our two speakers today, Professor Yoo Jong-so and Professor Lin Tan, will share their insight on how teachers' autonomy and agency are related to professional development, particularly in the turn of COVID-19. Today, each speaker will deliver their presentation for 40 minutes. And I've just checked the schedule. The Q&A session will be after the presentation from second speaker. However, I would like to encourage you to drop your question in the chat during the presentation. So if you have any question, don't hesitate to put the question in the chat box. All right, now, without further ado, let me introduce our two speakers for today. I'm so delighted that I have the opportunity to introduce them because they are certainly will give us insights and probably new perspectives on the topic that they are going to present. First, Professor Hee Jung-soo. Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, Professor Lin Tan. Okay, good morning, Professor Lin Tan. All right, we have here Professor Hee Jung-soo. She is a professor in the Department of Educational Technology, Illa Women's University in South Korea. Previously, she was with Pohang University of Science and Technology, South Korea as well, and also in National Institute of Education, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. She received her PhD degree from Instructional System Technology, Indiana University, back in 2005. Her main research interests include mobile learning, computer-supported collaborative learning, and informal learning. She has published extensive research papers in international journals and working paper series with UNESCO. And then our second speaker, Professor Lin Tan. Great to have you here with us, Professor.
Good morning.
Professor Lin Tan is a senior lecturer in English language and literacy curriculum and pedagogy in the School of Education at Western Sydney University. Before joining Western Sydney University, she was a lecturer at the National Institute of Education in Singapore, and she obtained her PhD from University of Lancaster. She has published extensively in the fields of teacher education, language and literacy education, educational technology, and digital learning. She currently serves on the editorial review board for the Journal of Adolescence and Adult Literacy and e-learning and digital media. All right, Bapak and Ibu, it seems that both speakers have something in common, yeah. They share similar research interest in educational technology. So I guess we can expect that both speakers will address that issue as well in their presentation. Okay, I'm not going to take more time on the introduction, so I'm going to give Professor Hee Jung-soo the floor. 40 minutes for your presentation, Professor Hee Jung-soo. Please welcome everybody, Professor Hee Jung-soo.
Sorry, I thought the program schedule is Dr. Lindy Tan first, then my presentation. I don't know which one is the final one. Yeah.
My bad. All right then. I'm so sorry, Professor Hee Jung-soo. So I guess I am going to give the opportunity for Professor Lin Tan. So sorry, Professor Lin Tan.
It's okay.
Floor is yours.
I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Just give me some time to get my slides out. Okay. Can everyone see my slide and hear me loud and clear? Yeah?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay, all right. All good. Let me just minimize so that I can see. Sorry. It's kind of hard to navigate in a very small screen. Oops. Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for inviting me. I'm really thrilled to be with you in this manner, though it's online, and I'm really looking forward to be in Indonesia in person next year. So my name is Lindy. I'm from Western Sydney University, and today I would like to share with you my thoughts on teacher identity, teacher agency, and teaching competence in the COVID-19 turn. Now, we all remember March 2020, and that's the beginning of the COVID-19 turn when school gates all over the world were shut. Now, since then, UNESCO has been monitoring really closely on the impact of school closures. And even to date, they are supporting countries in their recovery efforts to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 all over the world. Principals are plunged into abject ambiguity of running a school outside a school. And teachers, amongst all of us here, we all know we were required to flip our classes almost immediately without any warning, using new modalities. And on the social media, it's really interesting. We're beginning to see humorous memes, but to a certain extent, there's some social reality. And my favorite one are some that I'm sharing with you right now on the slide. Some people are thinking that Zoom meetings are like modern sciences. And apparently the best quote of 2020 is "you're muted" or "you're on mute." Okay. And today's students are given a plethora of names, and the latest one is the Zoom Boom generation. Not too sure whether you have heard of that or whether you like the names given to our students. But what all these memes are alluding to is the pressing need for teachers to develop competence in harnessing digital technologies for teaching and learning. And this urgency was exacerbated at the start of pandemic, and I must say that it remains a key priority to date. So at an unprecedented scale, online learning is accelerated, whether we like it or not, and it creates changes to teachers' roles and identity. So without any warning, teachers are now expected to be instructional designers, instructional leaders, online content providers, and they may not be equipped for all these new roles that they have to measure up to. Now, I'm beginning to see more and more online bottom-up initiatives in the online space. And this is an example that I pulled out from a closed Facebook group that I'm a member of. It's called On Butterfly Wings, and there are many subgroups for different key learning areas. They are all teachers in Australia. So what this group is doing is sharing resources and teaching ideas to meet the outcomes and scales based on the Australian curriculum. Now, this to me is a good example of demonstrating teachers as agents of change. And this is important because from a top-down approach, teachers may not have the support in time, and the bottom-up initiatives are necessary to be timely and ensure that there's some form of continuity of students' learning in the global pandemic. So in other words, teacher agency is vital to make sure that we have the prompt and appropriate changes in this time of uncertainty, given the fast pace of changes that we have to deal with. So when seeking to better understand how teachers enact professionalism in their transitions to remote teaching, the notion of teacher agency has to be attended to. Now, I personally draw on a social theory when I look into the notions of teacher agency, and my favorite one is from Amabea and Misch. So Amabea and Misch, they define teacher agency as the capacity of teachers to critically shape their own responsiveness to problematic situations. And this definition is really apt in the COVID-19 turn. So when teachers are developing the agency, they involve forms of action that draw on their past, the present, as well as the future actions. Now let's think about it. Whenever we encounter a new education challenge, we tend to think about our past. So that is the iterational dimension of teacher agency. We will ask ourselves what worked well for us in the past. And to a certain extent, so when we think about this iterational aspect of teacher agency, we are kind of like selectively reactivating our past patterns of thought and action. Now, Bourdieu would have called that habitus. So what is our taken for granted schemas of action that is drawn from our past experience? But that past experience may not be entirely appropriate for our present situation. So teachers with strong agency will start develop plans with multiple options, but they will make practical judgments to decide to weigh these options in order to respond appropriately to the emerging demands, dilemmas, and ambiguities of presently evolving situations. Of course, we all know that teachers do not rely merely on the past routines or repeat them mindlessly. So being reflective and as agents of change, teachers tend to project into the future. So that's the projective dimension of teacher agency, where they are innovators of future possibilities of thought and action in relation to what they hope to achieve in the future, what are the positive outcomes that they are looking forward to, and possibly on the fears and uncertainties that they have to combat. So in all these changes and planning, there will always be tension, and we know that. And one of the causes for these tensions could be due to the changing identity of a teacher. So teacher identity can be simplistically referred to what it means to be a teacher. And that's a pretty hard thing to answer now in terms of changing roles. I would say that teacher identity is a prerequisite to develop agency, and we need that in order for appropriate actions to be made. So Holland and colleagues are the first pioneers to spearhead that sense of teacher identity. And that's because teacher identity is a key means through which teachers think about what they really care about and what they care for, what is going on around them. Now, agency and identity can't really be separated. They are very strongly interlinked. But of course, in academia, the nature of such relationship are still being disputed or being argued by various researchers. But what is widely acknowledged is that agency and identity, they are inseparable aspects of teacher professional development and for any educational reforms to take place. So in making the shift from face-to-face delivery to remote teaching, we have to keep thinking about the influences of agency and identity. So teacher agency may contribute very positively to the construction of teacher identity. And at the same time, teacher identity can also be a precondition, some would argue, for the development of teacher agency. So sum it all up, teacher identity can be that guiding force for further agentic work in teaching practice. And at the same time, teacher agency facilitates that teacher autonomy, which will result in the reconstruction of a teacher's professional identity. So teacher identity is not fixed, it's never fixed. It's constantly changing in response to the evolving situations. Now, we all know that teachers no longer just rely on conferences like this or workshops to develop their own teacher competence, okay? But we know that teachers are definitely agents of change and capable of making reflective actions and decisions in their own practice. So the next question that comes to my mind is what sort of PD is needed to encourage teachers to constantly negotiate their agency, identity, and at the same time enhance their their teaching competence. That brings me to mind what Darling Hammond said about the 7 characteristics of effective professional development. It is for PD to be effective, it is content focused, okay, of course. I would say that it has to be skill focused as well, and that's probably enculturated in the learning by doing. It incorporates active learning, utilizing adult learning theory. And we see some of that just now in the Guru Pangarat program. And I personally take interest in that program after listening to that talk. It supports collaboration, typically integrated in workplace culture in job-embedded context, definitely involves heavily on modeling of effective practice where coaches and expert support is provided. There will definitely be opportunities for feedback and reflection, and for it to be effective, it has to be implemented over a sustained period. So in my work with teachers, I tend to position them as co-researcher and co-designer with me. I use this research methodology called formative and design experiments. Now, the name itself can be a bit misleading. This approach is anchored in workplace or in actual context where the changes take place. So it is very authentic. It may involve some form of statistical studies depending on the researcher, but it's definitely not under a controlled experiment context. I will talk more about this approach. What I would like to focus at about this approach is that there are good reasons why teachers are willing to be involved in this research methodology to develop their teaching competence. And it gives them the opportunities to advance their professional goals. So let me go through how this is done. Okay. First and foremost, this approach is grounded in developing understanding by seeking to accomplish practical and useful educational goals. So it ensures that teachers have some form of usable knowledge that can help them resolve their current educational challenge. As I mentioned earlier, it has a very strong focus on less controlled, authentic environments instead of tightly controlled laboratory-like settings. It uses and develops theory at the same time when it's making pedagogical interventions. So it's implemented in a strong context of trying to engineer successful instructional intervention. Now, some people think that teachers are not really interested in theories, and I don't really subscribe to that thoughts. Theories give us that explanatory power to explain why things work, what works, and why they are not. And that's where constant and iterative changes have to take place in an informed manner. So formative and design experiment, it entails innovative and speculative experimentation because every situation is unique, is context-based. It has to be highly pragmatic to the teachers involved. It is interdisciplinary, although I'm seeing more and more of such methodology being implemented in US language studies, partly because of my own interest in language and literacy studies. And it definitely seeks to create generalizations from multiple examples so that other people can glean from the precedents and see what are some of the steps or certain measures that can be appropriated to make sure that they are practical and can be customized to the unique context of implementation. So this approach is actually quite promising moving forward. And I feel that, computer having a mind of its own. It has the potential to develop teaching competence. So in this approach, teacher identity and agency are constantly negotiated and constructed as university researchers and teachers and other expert teams interact together to come up with practical educational interventions. The teachers involved, they have to take part in collaborative reflective inquiry with other teams to share knowledge and capitalize different levels of expertise so that there's positive changes that make sense to them, they're practical, they're contextual. In this way, when the teachers are participating in that in community building, in the professional learning community, the social competence is built. So collaboration is not just a 21st century skill for students, but it's a skill for teachers as well. Now, teachers develop their content and pedagogical knowledge as well, because remember, formative design experiment is content focused. And through that process, as they engage in designing curriculum materials to improve student learning with the researchers, their own subject knowledge is enhanced and therefore increasing their professional competence. And at the same time, they are expanding their repertoire of teaching strategies and skills, hence improving their own pedagogical competence. Now, we all know that for all innovations to take place, teachers' beliefs are very important. So through that chains of making changes, teachers' beliefs are constantly challenged and changed as they co-design pedagogical intervention. And these changes in turn shape their agency and identity. And I feel that this aspect is really important because it contributes to teachers' personal competence. They themselves have to welcome a growth mindset. They have to position themselves as a lifelong learner at the same time. And as they become more adaptive, more responsive, and embrace their growth mindset in their own professional development, this disposition or habits of mind are creating good examples for their own students who too are navigating through these changes in their own educational experience. Now, all these tenets of formative and design experiments remind me of what John Dewey talked about about reflective inquiry. Now, John Dewey is a very strong advocate of reflective inquiry, as most of us know, and he believed that reflective inquiry is really the anchoring point of designing any educational experience. So he put forward 5 key aspects of reflective inquiry, and it has to involve some form of intellectualization, which means framing a problem. There must be some guiding ideas, logic or reasoning, testing of ideas, and of course, end with a satisfactory resolution, which probably will give rise to further inquiry. So the individual's ability to question through all these daily activities in the social environment that they locate themselves in makes reflective inquiry a social activity. These notions has given rise to a very popular framework for online learning, and that's called the Community of Inquiry Framework. And I like that, and I personally use that in my teacher education program, where it strengthens a teacher's online presence. How so? By promoting 3 interrelated types of presence: the cognitive presence, the social presence, and the teaching presence. So in a hurry to transit to remote teaching, a lot of teachers are very concerned about pushing e-content to the students. Now, that is really important, but we do not want to forget about the reflective inquiry and community building in the online space as well. So cognitive presence makes sure that students are engaging in knowledge construction, meaning making, ongoing reflection, and participating in productive interactions. And we all know that thoughts and knowledge construction are important, and using productive talk in the online space is a key to make or break learning experiences. Social presence is important. We do not want students to be isolated in any way. So the teacher and students coming together to form a learning community, even if it's in the online space, is important. The last point is key, and we want to see more of that, the teaching presence as well. Now, we all know that there are different forms of designing learning environments. The teacher's design, facilitation, and setting of purposeful direction to meet positive student learning outcomes is key. So we want to see how these 3 types of presence can be more strongly integrated to create online presence and reflective online educational experience for our students moving forward. So I'm not too sure about you, but right where I am right now, we're having a full lockdown and students have yet to go back to school. Although things look a little bit morbid with the new Delta strain and changes going on in this global pandemic, I would also like to think about the opportunities pandemic has given us. And remember that we are agents of change and there are things that we can do for our students. Before I conclude my presentation, I would like us to think about the whole soul of education by pushing on going beyond providing content to designing for students online learning by building community online. And the community of inquiry is a good way to start. So as teachers continue to think of ways to enhance their teacher agency, change their identity, and even challenge their own teaching beliefs. Now, I'm pretty sure that if we continue doing that, then we can expect a more positive social futures in the COVID-19 can take place. So on that positive note, I would like to thank you and I look forward to discussing with you further what are some of all these recovery measures and changes that we can make together as a new community starting from today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lindy. That was very interesting and certainly gives us new insight on teacher identity and also teacher agency. Before we go on, I would like to apologize to Professor Hee Jung-soo. The committee has already sent me the new schedule and rundown, but unfortunately, I was referring to the old ones. So, okay, once again, so sorry. And now we are going to have Professor Hee Jung-soo, and she's going to present, okay, this one, teachers' adaptive expertise and autonomy for resilient teaching and learning in the face of COVID-19 pandemic. Professor Hee Jung-soo will deliver the presentation for 40 minutes. I have seen so many questions in the chat box and we will address those questions later on after the presentation. Please welcome Professor Hee Jung-soo.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Is my audio clear to everyone?
Very clear.
All right, thank you. I think having Dr. Tan's presentation earlier than mine is a really good sequence because she really gave good insight, big ideas about this topic. And I will zoom into more like a practical issues of teaching and learning. So I think the sequence is better. All right, so I will share my presentation. All right, just to let you know, I get this message that X number of people in the waiting room. So I'm not sure whether someone is handling this this list. Yeah. Some project going on in Indonesia, and I always enjoyed working with them. So this is the title of my presentation, and then I will, as I mentioned earlier, I will focus more about like online teaching and learning during this pandemic period. So my name is Hyo Jung-soo. I'm with Department of Education and Technology in Ewha Womans University in South Korea. Okay, so this is the outline of my talk. So I will talk about the changing landscape of education, especially focus on the online learning aspects, and then moving to adaptive expertise for teachers, and then resilient teaching practices. And then lastly, I'd like to share with you some of the principle-based approach with some of the examples from my own teaching as well. Okay, so changing landscape of education. So we have experienced many challenges in this during this pandemic period. So think about it, what was most challenging when you teach or learn online during COVID-19? And yeah, you think about it. So what was most challenging? Yeah, so last year, like April, like when the semester started, I feel like, oh, how I'm going to teach online for the full semester. So it was very challenging, but it's like a roller coaster, like as you can see here. So you have to navigate like what is possible or what is not really possible in online learning environment. So I thought that, you went through this navigation by yourself, and then perhaps by now you are very familiar with online teaching and learning. So let me share some of the survey findings that my university did last year. So it's basically like Korean students and teachers' perspective, but it may be similar to Indonesian context as well. So last year we did this survey to get some of the perceptions about online teaching and learning from students and instructors. So what kind of mode they prefer? So you can teach real-time synchronous, or you can teach like a non-real-time asynchronous. So both students and instructors, they prefer asynchronous. That means they don't really like real-time, teaching and learning. They prefer non-real-time. And the students prefer more asynchronous learning. Maybe it gives more flexibility to them. And also they prefer video-based content rather than just, reading articles and things like that. And pros and cons of online learning. And what they like about online learning is that they feel it's very flexible. And I think we all agree with that. It is very flexible in terms of time and place. And especially for engineering students, okay, they really like the fact that they can review and repeat the content. So if you are coming, any of you are coming from like engineering schools, there are a lot of content that you have to master within the semester, and the instructor just assume that you know everything and move to the next topic and next topic. So you never get the chance to fill the gap. You just sometimes you give up. But because of online learning, the benefit is that you can repeat and review, and so you can catch up the content. Cons, the limitation is again the time. So it feels that you need more time to create the content, and the quality of teaching and learning seems low, and the students are lacking self-regulation skills. So then when I got this data from the survey, I kind of questioned, is online teaching or online learning, it's really different from face-to-face teaching and learning? So think about it, is it really different? Okay. And so, but my answer to that question is, so let's ask these two questions first. Do you feel that online classes take more time to prepare? Yes or no? Right? And yes, it takes more time. I mean, to prepare the contents, and you have to, if you create video content, you have to, record and edit the video lessons. But some of you say no. I mean, it takes a lot of time when you create the content for the first time, but you find that you can reuse them. Like if you use the content last year, you can reuse this year, right? And that the time gradually decrease. Let me ask you one more question, okay? Do you feel that face-to-face classes are more effective than online classes? Okay. So think about your answer to this question. Yes, I feel that face-to-face classes are more effective because I can interact with the students. I can quickly sense what they are doing and how they feel. But some of you say no. I mean, even online classes, I found that I can use many strategies to interact with the students, which is very similar to face-to-face classes, although we cannot see each other. And also it is more convenient because I'm not bounded by time and space, right? So what I want to emphasize from these two questions is that we have both perspectives. So we feel that both perspectives are possible. But if you look at the media, all right, or even educational policy, they tend to force us to choose one by asking this kind of questions. So do we have to teach face-to-face or do we have to teach online? Do we have to open the school or do we have to ask students to study from home, right? This is like a policy question, but do we have to choose one, really? Do we really have to choose one? Do we really have to put these two on the extreme and choose one? I feel that is not a good way to solve this problem. In fact, this society, the Society of Learning Sciences, International Society of Learning Sciences, announced this position statement last year, around April or May. They put that this statement that a resumption of physical schooling is necessary for students to learn is a mischaracterization of what we know about when and how meaningful learning occurs. So what this society is trying to emphasize and giving a message to the public is that it is misleading to say that the learning can only happen in physical schools. So the decades of educational research telling us that learning can happen, meaningful learning can happen in any places, in any time, if you design the learning activities well, meaningfully. So let me share one story from my students. So this is the Instagram posting from one of our university students. So during early COVID-19, like March, our university couldn't really decide whether they have to open the campus or not. So we delayed the decision for 2 weeks. All right. So she put up this posting in her Instagram. So she is a student who tend to be very late in every session. So when we have like a physical sessions on campus, so what this picture is telling is that she was late one day and the instructor is kind of scolding her, like, why do you come in from the front door? You have to come in through the like a back door. All right. And then she realized that, okay, so since we are turning to online learning, I'm not going to be late because I don't have to travel all the way to reach the campus. So what happens? So she posted another Instagram message 2 weeks later. This is what she posted 2 weeks later. So yeah, so I put the English translation here. So the title was the same again. So what she's telling us is that, you know, like maybe the lesson was like a 9:30, the same again. She got up like perhaps like a 9 o'clock or, you know, or maybe like a 10 a.m. So what happened? The class already started. So she was late. So what she decided to do, she said, oh, I don't know, like I just watched Netflix. So she skipped the class. All right. So what I'm trying to telling from this to Instagram message is like, what is really important? Yeah, what is really the problem in online learning is that we have to shift our question or focus from what is better to what is good teaching or what is good learning. So we shouldn't ask the question like whether online learning is better or face-to-face is better than online, or, you know, as such question is not really productive. And often, so as you can see from her case, often the problems in face-to-face classes are also found in online classes, such as lack of feedback and interaction, very vague evaluation criteria, and it's just delivering knowledge-centered instruction. So the essence of the problem is not really whether learning takes place face-to-face or online, but whether you are following the basic principles of good teaching in your online teaching and learning. So I'm going to talk about it in the second part of my presentation. So let me share some of the predictions of what's going to happen in the post-COVID-19. So we have already went through more than a year of this pandemic period. And many scholars are making predictions about how the education will change after the pandemic is over. So there are 3 predictions that I can suggest. So first prediction is blended learning will be very pervasive. And then even we may be able to see new forms of blending beyond just blending online and offline learning. And the second prediction is home-based learning will be also common in the future. Therefore, more responsibilities will be given for parents. So parents will be equally important as teachers. Therefore, the parents have to take care of their children's education at home, so they will demand more flexible working environments. The last prediction is we have to really redefine the role of physical schools and also the role of teachers. So in the near future, we may not be teaching on like a town-bounded way. So, like go to school 8 o'clock, you take lessons for like 15 minutes, take a break and blah, blah, blah. This is very time-bounded approach. And it may disappear in the next few years because there will be no fixed routines. And then students will have more choices about how they want to learn. Then this leads to my idea of resilient teaching, all right? So these predictions are pretty much different from what we know about teaching in the school. So you have to design and facilitate learning experiences that are adaptive to fluctuating conditions and disruptions, like what you have experienced during this COVID pandemic, all right? And there might be another, fluctuating condition coming again, and that you need to know how you can adapt to that condition. With that, I'd like to bring this theoretical framework about adaptive expert. And some of you may have seen this framework before. This framework is coming from transfer research. And these scholars are studying how someone become an adaptive expert. You can apply this framework to yourself or to your students as well. How can someone be so adaptive, right? So you can think about 2 aspects, 2 dimensions in this framework. One dimension is efficiency, and another dimension is innovation. So becoming adaptive is it's really the balance between efficiency and innovation. So if you are very good at efficiency, but if you are not so innovative, you become routine expert. That means you know how to deal routines, like everyday routines, very well, but you don't really know how to deal with changes, unexpected changes. If you are not efficient but trying to be innovative, you will get frustrated because things are not going well as you expected. So you will be very frustrated and you may give up in the middle of the process. So becoming an adaptive expert by yourself, you need to take the balance between efficiency and innovation. And this is what they call OAC, so Optimal Adaptability Corridor. So you need to follow this, okay? Like what Dr. Tan mentioned earlier about the habits of mind and growing mindset, that will lead to you reach this adaptive expert path. Then how you become an adaptive expert, and what I see is that many of you are routine experts. Okay, so you know very well how to deal with the routine practices and how you become adaptive expert. So what the scholar says is that you need to be away from old ways of thinking, and that you try to give new interpretations to your new experiences. For example, like COVID-19 is a new experience to you. But if you fall into the old ways of thinking, you are not becoming adaptive expert. You need to give new interpretations to what is really happening in this situation. So for example, this is the example of the Minerva School. So I know, I guess many of you know this Minerva School's success story. So they don't have a physical campus. They teach like a 100% online. Before the pandemic, when I shared this example of Minerva School, many people say, oh, how can you teach like a fully online without a physical school? And so they feel this is very innovative approach. But now you look at this image, how do you feel? Do you feel very innovative? It becomes a routine for many of us because now we don't go to school and we teach online. So you need to give new interpretations of this online learning environment instead of just going back to your old ways of teaching in physical classrooms. And I feel now is a really good time to innovate and become an adaptive expert. The reason is that because we have a shared experiences. Although pandemic came to us as a forced situation, so we didn't choose to go to online teaching. It was like a forced situation. But the fact that almost all of us have experienced new ways of teaching and learning will be a great asset to innovate and move away from old ways of teaching and learning practices and culture. So I'm moving to the second part of my my talk. So I'm going to share more of the like practical examples of resilient teaching and learning. So this is my big ideas. Like this applies to like a face-to-face teaching and online teaching as well. But there are three things that you have to think about. Like, okay, when you innovate education: pedagogy, and space and technology. All right, so PST framework. And resilient teaching requires new forms of interaction between teachers, students, and content and tools. So you have to think about this PST framework, how they can be redesigned in online situations. So let me share some of the examples from my own university and teaching. All right, so in my university, because of the COVID-19, we have to implement new forms of hybrid learning on campus. I'm not sure whether this is the case for like Indonesia or Australia, but what we did last semester is that in terms of the pedagogy, we give our students a choice to how they want to learn. If they want to come to campus like them, they can come. If they choose to take the lesson online, they can do it. All right. So it's a choice given to the students. And space. All right. Because now you have a students in physical classroom and also students from online, right? So the classroom, the lecture room should be designed to support such hybrid learning. And also technology. Now, so he is the instructor. So he has to manage both online and offline students, right? So this kind of monitoring screen is very necessary for him, right? To facilitate the interaction. And you see the classroom has this like a back, the screen on the back of the classroom. So the instructor can quickly monitor what is happening online, although his attention to the face-to-face classroom. So PST, so let me talk about it. So let me talk about the space first. I feel the space design will be very important, okay? Even the pandemic is over, because the students will demand very flexible learning spaces, right? Even on campus, we need to design individual learning spaces, because sometimes they take classes online, sometimes they go to the classroom to attend to face-to-face lectures. So they have this hybrid mode of learning, although they are on campus. And as I mentioned, all the classrooms are redesigned to have this kind of monitoring screen in the classroom. And pedagogy and technology, the TFAC framework will be very important, because online teaching will be a common practice for all the teachers. Therefore, every teacher needs to have a very strong connections about content, pedagogy, and technology. So you need to know how to teach and what to teach and what is the good digital tools to support your pedagogy. And I know that there's another speaker in the conference who will speak to our TPAC framework. So let me share like what best instructors do online learning. So I think teaching tend to be very isolated, but you need to get the ideas from those best teachers, like how they do differently. So my university collected cases from those best instructors voted by the students. And so sorry that it is in Korean, but I try to pick up the English examples. So this instructor, so she shared what are the good principles, her teaching tips in online classes. And this is the design of her classrooms. Okay, so let me share some of the principles that I found from this collection of best examples. So when I read through these best examples, best practices of online learning, I found that there are some principles. I found certain principles. I extracted certain principles. But I found that these principles apply to both face-to-face and online classes. So it kind of lead me to think that those who teach very well in face-to-face classes, they are likely to teach very well in online classes. They adapt very quickly, and they know what is really good teaching already. It's like embedded in their own teaching. So for principles that I found from their experiences is promoting interaction. This is very important. Dr. Tan also mentioned about the community of inquiry, right? So try to promote interaction. You only focus on the content, but what is important is promoting the interaction between you and students, and also between the students and students. And also try to design knowledge creation lessons for deeper understanding. It is also possible in online. And also try to give clear guidelines and criteria for evaluation. And also try to give prompt and productive feedback to the students. These good principles apply to online teaching as well. So this is the summary of what I suggest as a principle-based approach for good online teaching. I developed this because I don't want to share 10 principles that is so many, so you cannot really digest. So think about these three things, okay? The first is your personal belief and attitude about good teaching. The second is empathy-centered design. And third is experimenting with ideas. Then you will teach well in online. The first principle, try to develop your own personal belief and attitude about good teaching. It would be good to just write down, what do you believe about good teaching? And what is really meaningful learning from your own perspective? For me, meaningful learning is my personal belief. I feel that although I'm an instructor, I try to reserve time for telling. I always try to ask students to share their experience, talk first, and then I try to tell, all right? But usually we tell first and ask students, right? But reverse the sequence. Also productive failure, try to give them a space to fail because they can learn from their experiences, although they may fail, right? So last year, I have to teach a course online about artificial intelligence in education. That was very challenging topic to teach online. But if I just lecture a lecture, it's going to be very boring. So what I did is like a first, I asked them to experience and talk first. You can follow this sequence with me. So like, okay, so let's look at this picture here. Can you count how many chihuahuas and how many muffins from the pictures? You can type your answer in the chat box. How many chihuahuas? Oh, I got
Yes.
8, 7, 10, 9. All right, 8 chihuahuas. The answer is, I think, 8. All right, and let's look at this one, like a first one, like kitten and ice cream. Also quickly check, like what is like how many ice cream, right? Yeah, is it 8 again? I didn't really count. Let me count again. I think it's 8 again. I think they try to balance. Yeah. Okay, then I asked one more question to my students. Okay, so what is more difficult for computers to program? Walking or play at the chess play? You can type the answer, A or B. What is more challenging for computers? A or B? I got A, some say B. A or B, A, B, okay, yeah. So we have different answers to this question. So I did this, and then this is the part that I want to explain, is Moravec's paradox. This is the concept that I want to explain to the students. What this paradox is telling is things easy to human are difficult for computers, all right? So the answer here is chess play is easy for computers to program, but walking is difficult, all right? So because you went through 1 and 2, when I say number 3, you feel, oh yeah, that's it. Okay, so I can understand this paradox, right? So, okay, so let's talk about the second principle, is empathy-centered design. So what I want to share here is that it's really important to know your students, how they feel, what they want, and what they understand, all right? This empathy. The reason is that during this pandemic period, things change like every day. So they feel very uncertain. What's gonna happen like tomorrow? And so when this thing will be over, and their feeling is very uncertain. So you as a teacher need to reduce this uncertainty. So this instructor, what she did is that she kind of put like a very clear guidelines about how she's going to evaluate and what are the things that the average students have to do, like a week by week, with a checklist here. This reduce uncertainty. And also the online exam, right? So it's very challenging to do online exam. So instead of she just decide how she's gonna do the online exam, she opened an online discussion to hear what students should think about online exam and what they prefer, trying to involve them in the decision-making process. Involving them in the decision-making process is really easy these days because there are a lot of tools out there that you can use in your lessons. So like a Padlet, I guess many of you have used this tool before. So this is like you can easily share ideas in real time, and then you can use this for individual brainstorming ideas. And I think this is the one that I did with Indonesian teachers like last time when I did a PD session. You can use this online platform for group as well. So what this instructor did is she separate group A, B, C, D, and then share their like ideas online. Mentimeter, this is online polling that you can do. And this is like a quick question and answer. Due to the time, we can't do it, but you can try it. The thing is that it is very easy to create. You just invest like 10 minutes because the template is already there. You just need to invest 10 minutes and then your lesson will be very interactive. The last principle is experimenting with new ideas. So I introduced some of the tools out there, but you may still question like which one is relevant to my teaching. And there's no answer for that because you need to experience and then you need to experiment with new ideas and tools in your lesson and decide. Okay, without your own experience, you cannot decide. But what I want to emphasize is that you have to start with the pedagogy first. Don't start with the technology first. Think about what is the problem that you are faced with. Then think about the technology tools that will help you to solve that problem, right? So for example, recently I found that Google has a lot of applications out there, and then these are all the Google applications. And then this Jamboard kind of got my attention, and then I was curious, like, what is this? And this is like an interactive whiteboard. And because at that time, I want to move away from PowerPoint. And then also during the class, I like to just quickly create their presentation and share online. Then I found that this Jamboard is very useful for this purpose because it's an interactive online whiteboard and you can quickly do it. Let me just share quickly if it's possible. Okay. I think I can share in the Q&A when we have time later. And also, you don't really have to use new platforms. You can use common platforms in very creative ways. For instance, this is how to do image-based discussions. If you use Google Drive, you can upload this image. Okay, let me quickly demonstrate because I'm almost end of my presentation. Can you see the image on the website? Yeah, all right. Yes. So yeah, for example, if you want to do like image-based discussion, you can put up this kind of image in your Google Drive. And I have shared the link. Oh, sorry. I think it only went to Lindy Tan. Okay, you can click the link and go to this website, and you will see this image. And then you find the place that you know. Okay. For example, I think this place is like Bora Bora. Right. Anyone goes to this website, you can, highlight the areas and then put the name of the place that you know. Okay, so do this kind of activity, and then you move to the main topic about perhaps like a tourism or famous places, around the world and things like that. Another example is this one. Can you see the articles? Can you see the articles? Yeah,
Yes.
This is the article that I use in my graduate teaching, graduate class. This is very difficult. This is very important article, but students have difficulty understanding the key ideas of this article. So you can involve them to this like a meaning making process. So you make this PDF article available online and ask them to highlight and put their questions or comments. And so like highlight the part and then, okay, so for example, what is the meaning and things like that. And then based on these comments, and you can start your explanation, all right? So I just share like 2 examples that you can quickly implement in your teaching. And these are using the common platforms out there. You don't really have to use new platforms and also buy new tools. So my last slide as a closing. So the key ideas of my talk is that the principles of good teaching apply to both face-to-face and online teaching. So don't think that online teaching is very different from your face-to-face teaching, right? And also the importance of principle-based approach. So I suggest 3 principles. And also you can come up with your own principles as well. And also try to experiment with new ideas and tools. And then you will become an adaptive teacher, okay? And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Hye Jung-soo. That was very enlightening. We learned a lot from your presentation about good teaching that apply to both face-to-face and also online learning, and also the importance of being adaptive, particularly today. We have so many changes occurring very quickly, so we need to be able to adapt to those situations quickly as well. And Bapak and Ibu, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the question and answer session. There are so many questions in the chat box, and the committee already helped me to pick some questions. Oh, by the way, I have just been notified that the session ends at 10:35. All right. I'm going to read some questions for Dr. Tan. We have 3 here from Ibu Fatimah from Diponegoro Islamic Senior High School, Yayasan Pendidikan Islam Diponegoro, Surakarta. Hello, Ibu Fatimah. And the question is, as a millennial teacher who teach millennials, do you have any suggestion how to have a more engaging teaching learning process to transfer skills that will be useful for the future of our students, since we are facing very uncertain era? That's the first question for Dr. Tan. Okay, Would you like to answer the question one by one, or should I read all question first, Dr. Tan?
I think one by one would be better.
All right. Okay, so
I
that's the
think-
question number one. Yes.
Yeah, I think from all three keynotes, we have come up with some generic principles, and more customized appropriation is definitely needed. I think first thing first, we got to make a distinction between online participation versus online engagement. So a lot of us use, standard learning management system where you have learning analytics, you can track, what sorts of materials were downloaded, were read, who take part in certain forum, how many times a week. Now, to me, all these are online participation, and it may not necessarily equals to online engagement. Now, for me, I feel, because I come more from a humanities approach, I think designing for productive talk is important, giving students like prompts, to even teach or model for them how to ask a good question. That's also important. And in a primary school context, for example, or rather if for anyone who hasn't had that kind of experience of learning, you can think of very simple examples. And because I'm targeting at primary teacher education, we use simple techniques like exit ticket or 2 stars and 1 wish, where, before the students leave the online space with you, you get them to articulate their own reflection. So what are 2 things that you have benefited from this online lesson, and what question do you have? And even in my initial teacher education, I use a visual technique called I see, I think, I wonder. So like Hyo Jong, I give them a visual prompt. Of course, it has to be related to what I'm teaching and not just, for trivial purpose, and ask them, what did you see? And then, when you look at the images, what kind of questions or things were prompted by that visual? And then get them to talk or direct them, our teaching presence come in, direct them to the main topic that you want to think about. And then before they go, what questions? Because questions are also important. So I often ask my students, if you don't have the answers, then what is your question? That's even harder, and they hate me for that. So, but we are talking about inquiry, keep learning. And in order to learn, you've got to know what are questions, like Alice in Wonderland. Where do I go? That depends on where you want to go. What do you want to do? So I would start with that. In terms of the engaging participation and process, I think Hyo Jong has showed us a good sample to start with, but nothing replaces the teacher. So I would say couple all these interactive tools to promote interaction. That's more important. So I would start with that. Now,
Okay.
I just had maybe before I go to the other one, because at the moment I'm doing augmented reality in primary teacher education, and the group of teachers that I'm working with, when I talk about formative and design experiment, they were trying to implement that in their remote teaching now, because remember, COVID is not exactly over for us, and in Sydney it's a full lockdown. The funny thing is, I'm beginning to think that yes, pedagogy comes first, then technology, but sometimes you're also limited by the technical affordances of technology. So last night, this teacher was telling me, how she wanted to bring in the virtual animal and to tell the students, hey, we miss you. Look at all the animals, in the class. They're all waiting for you to come back and play with them. Now, remember, these are kindergarten students. But, these are good motivation, and that's important, because education is not just about cognition, the affect, the empathy part is also important for the mental well-being of staying connected. But I'm also thinking, AI and things like that, like augmented reality, is more meaningful when you put it into the hands of the learner, rather than from a third-person perspective, looking at what the teacher is doing. It'd be more powerful if the students are using it themselves. But of course, the next question, and probably it will pop up in the next 2 questions, is access. Not all students have access to all these mobile devices. And today we all know that is the #1 barrier to learning.
Yes, I agree completely with you. In some area here, we have been struggling with internet connection ever since the pandemic, and yeah, it's a problem that it is out of our control. All right. Next question from Bapak Sumardi from 11 Maret University. Teacher agency and identity seem to be two interrelated ones, but many teachers do not understand yet the position of the two. Is there any specific strategy to build their awareness so that they are motivated to engage more in various professional development?
I wouldn't say specific strategy, but I would think that, it's the different approaches of developing their professional development. And I feel that the best way is to engage them in making the changes themselves. So just now that Guru Pengara learning journey program, that one actually is a good strategy to develop teacher agency and identity, because when you give teachers that autonomy to make changes, their agency will definitely change. You are giving them the capacity to design for change. And because you give them that new role and responsibility, the way they see themselves will change. And that is the teacher identity. So in my past, I think Hyo Jung as well, because we came from the same institution.
The committee, please unmute.
Okay, I'm unmuted. The code remains the same, isn't it? Best code of 2021 too. So, in our past interactions with instructional leaders, including principals, assistant principals, head of department, we get them not just to attend workshop, but apply whatever they learn in the workshop in their workplace and come back to reflect on the experience with us. And that kind of reflections will get them to think about that power that's given to them. That will further their agency and constantly change their identity that is appropriate or required for whatever situation that they are located in. So I think a good way to start actually would be what Indonesia has already prepared yourself for. So I kind of like that coaching, mentoring model. So that could be a starting point.
All right. I have a question. This is not from the participant because you have just mentioned about a professional development program earlier that is initiated from their own autonomy to develop or improve themselves. But the issue is sometimes when they go back from the teacher development program, they have no support system in school. So they join the development program, then there's nothing changes. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, there are different spheres of influence, I gather. I sometimes tell my initial teachers, like, I taught you wonderful ideas and they be prepared. They're not always, be welcomed by your mentoring teachers when you during your practicum. And that's where you got to find your creative solutions. So sometimes I tell my initial teachers, like, just to give you an example, but you are the king and the queen of your classes. Just like the on butterfly wings teachers, a lot of resources are not given to them because Australia is so big. When something is initiated, the changes do not take place immediately. What do you do? So instead of looking at what you do not have, start with what you have. Are there things or people, a community that you can identify with where you can make that changes in a very local and yet meaningful way? So you just start small. That will probably would be your key locus of change. And of course, the teacher autonomy is related to teacher agency. That's why if you remember that in my slide, who you really are is also affected by where you work. Because if in some places you will have more restrictions than autonomy. So I guess there are different levels of autonomy and the different levels where you can assert your agency. But I think we shouldn't dismiss what we can do, even if it's a very small level or a very micro level. So I would say start with what you have in your class.
Okay. Next question from Dr. Vina from Calvary College. Virajpet Kodagu Karnataka, India. Okay, India. The question is, how can teachers reach the rural students during the pandemic, as there is a lot of technical glitches in the rural end? So this is the concern that you raised earlier.
So, well, this probably would be an administrative question. I'm not sure how to handle your India situation, but right here in Australia, I've got teachers who drop learning packages, hand copies, or step by step. Okay, you'll be surprised because we do have low socioeconomic students. And when they don't have mobile devices, the schools actually lend them mobile devices. So we do have diverse learning environments. It's not all, connected. So again, this is where, teachers agency come in. If you can't, we don't really have a one size fits all answers. And just like when Hyojung was mentioned of being adaptive, the learning environments that you design is hybrid, is diverse. It all depends on what students and what kind of background they come from. So although we keep talking about making the transition from face-to-face to online, but that comes in different shapes and sizes. So you're not the only one. So you might think that you come from a developing perspective, but right here where I am in Australia, there are teachers who are doing that as well.
All right, it seems like we can find this issue in almost every area. Yeah, not all area are covered with good internet connection, and issues like that still come up in many discussion. Okay, thank you, Dr. Tan. And now I'm going to move on to the questions for Professor Hyojung Soo. The first is from Agustina Rebecca Nadiak from Unika Widya Mandala, Surabaya. Okay, the question is, shifting class into another activity such as Netflix, play game happened with my students. They have lost interest in teaching learning with the teacher. There should be a good strategy by teachers to build the students' interest in learning. Do you have any suggestions related to this? It seems like the students got distracted with the Netflix and things like that.
Yeah, like the one that I share, right?
Yeah.
Okay, my answer to that question is maybe. Okay, I always give this in. Maybe your lesson is boring. Yeah. So yeah, because your lesson is boring, that's why the students get easily distracted. If you try to engage them in activities, they don't have time to surf the internet and go to watch Netflix and things like that. All right. So I feel that instead of blaming the students of their lack of regulation skills, perhaps we have to look inside, like whether my lesson is really interesting, and whether my students perceive that my lessons are really meaningful to them, relevant to them. If things are relevant and then meaningful to them, like they try to pay attention to it. Of course, there is a group of students, whatever you do, they don't seem to be very motivated to learn, right? But you may need to, personally approach them and they try to identify what is the problem they experience, right? But most of the time, as long as your lessons are interactive, try to engage students instead of just telling things, very one way, then you may be able to get their attentions.
Okay, and perhaps it is possible to use the materials from Netflix as well, right? To engage students into the lesson.
That is a great strategy. I mean, if you are teaching like English, for example, yeah, so you can get the snippets of the movie, or and even like I also watch Netflix, and I happen to see many good documentary programs. Like recently, I watched the politics in Brazil. I know they became really messy in their politics, and they changed president after president, and then just watching 1 hour documentary, I fully understand what is going on in the country, right? So try to engage, try to incorporate the things they already have, right? Mm-hmm. And they already are familiar with. Okay, then you may be successful.
Okay, thank you. All right, now next question. I think this is similar to a previous question from Muhammad Yudis Alfiananda Rusnanto from Universitas 11 Maret. The question is, any form of teaching that involves online connectivity after the pandemic may be considered a step forward in teaching and learning process because of its flexibility to meet the students' effective learning needs. But should it be implemented in a third world country like Indonesia, where a lot of students struggle to provide themselves with proper hardware and a decent internet connectivity? Again, this is the issue of connectivity and internet. Should we continue having this kind of online learning after the pandemic?
All right. This is one of the common questions that we get. Like I think Dr. Tan also addressed this question earlier. This access problem, right? Access to the internet, access to the devices, and then it's okay to move to online. But what I shared during my presentation is this prediction going to a hybrid blended mode of learning. It's going to happen. Whatever you do, it's going to be happening in the near future. It's going to be common practices. So you have to prepare for that. But you still have students who do not have computers at home, have very slow connections. I feel this is a policy question. I don't think as a teacher, individual teacher, you can propose solutions to that. Your educational policymakers need to think that this is a very important problem, okay, for your education systems. You need to voice out so they can invest this infrastructure. All right, then things will be better. Korea went through that stage as well, right? So of course, we still have areas and students lacking access, but like 10 years ago, the Korean government invested a lot to build this infrastructure. So without the investment from the government, you cannot overcome this problem as an individual teacher. But as an immediate solution, what like Dr. Tan has mentioned, you have to utilize the resources that you already have. You as a teacher already have, or the students already have. And that is the best solution that you can do at this moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I guess, again, we have to be very adaptive to the situation that we have today. And I think with or without the pandemic, we couldn't stop the technology to enter education. So we have to prepare ourselves and find the best solution to that. Okay.
Can I just jump in at this moment?
Yes, Dr. Tan, please.
I think what we're trying to say is technology should not be the driving force. We are forced to use technology. I mean, I like technology. Hyo-jung obviously like technology, but to some people, they're forced to use technology because it's not their, preference. Technology comes in handy because of the connectedness, because we can't be in a face-to-face environment when pandemic first started. So moving forward to post-COVID-19 turn, I think what we're trying to advocate is the good principles and what Hyo-jung meant as, what makes good education. So writing on the earlier two questions, I would think about it. Why do students like to play games? Well, so it's the game-based learning that we should be applying, not game as an and. So students like game-based learning because it's meaningful to them, as it drives their interest. It was based on their interest. So I would say, perhaps you think about in your context of teaching, how do you harness that student's interest, in negotiating what needs to be taught? And the other one is learner autonomy. They love making choices, and that's what takes place in games environment. You've got choices. So perhaps, the second question you can ask in your instruction is, how do I turn the table around and give students more choices in their learning? And the third one is immediate feedback. You know how when we play games, you have level 1 and you know why you can't be at level 2. and then you try to make certain strategies, and then you go on to another level that fits you, it rewards you, and you go on to another level and so forth. And students want that drive, that competition. You know, it's not necessarily against other players. Of course they can, but it's also against themselves as a player. They have that sense of achievement. And James Porgy talked about that, the achievement principle. And of course, the other one is staying connected. Some people like to play games by themselves, but we know that in today's context, most people like to be connected in the community of gamers. So again, going back to community building, that social presence. So I think we all have different contexts that we need to negotiate with. Going back to the metaphor, the soul of education, I would say let students be our compass. They should be, the compass that help us make the decision, and there isn't one size that fits all. So when you have the compass right, I think as teachers who are agents of change, you will know how to navigate the environment.
Yes, okay. Noted, Dr. Tan. So I guess that is the key. We have to focus on the pedagogy first, and then we try to embrace the agency of the teacher and also the autonomy of the learners. Next question. This one is from Novi Rahmawati from 11 Maret as well. Okay, the question is, I would like to ask Professor Lee Jung-soo how to prepare a good teaching in the COVID-19 pandemic, because teachers sometimes are better in pedagogy than technology, and how to balance the two. That's a very nice question.
Yeah, so I think that was the topic of my my talk. Yeah, so how you can prepare. So I emphasize there's no magic for that question. So you have to experiment with new ideas. So you have to act. You can't just wait, and you have to act. But at least you are good at pedagogy. So you clear one thing, right? You just need to know technology, right? So as long as you are good with pedagogy, you just need to experiment with technology. But also, as I mentioned in my presentation, there are many tools out there, and they are also very easy to use. You just need to invest a few, like 10 minutes, and then you can quickly create. So don't be afraid. Okay, technology tools are getting easier and easier to use for your teaching. So try to try one very simple, and then move to the next one and next one. It's like a cooking. Like you find your own recipe by trying out, right? You can't make the perfect recipe just cooking one dish, right? So try and then try again, and then you will have your own recipe for your own teaching. Yeah.
Okay. Oops. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Professor Lee Jung-soo. I guess those are the questions that we can accommodate because we have very limited time, and I have been notified by the committee that I should end the session. I'm so sorry I couldn't forward all questions that you have posted in the chat box. I'm very happy that you are all engaged in this presentation until this moment. Thank you, Dr. Linda Tan, and also Professor Lee Jung-soo. Very inspiring and certainly eye-opening for all of us. I find it very useful. The tips are very practical, and I do hope that the participant got several takeaway points from the presentation today. Once again, thank you very much. I would like to emphasize the importance of teacher agency in professional development, and we have to embrace the changing identity of teachers, particularly today in the pandemic era. And then I would also like to emphasize the importance of being able to be adaptive to changes from Professor Lee Jung-soo's presentation. All right, thank you very much once again, Dr. Tan and Professor Lee Jung-soo, and also all participants. I guess I have to end the session, and over to you, Mutia. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.